Hello, everybody. I'm sitting here in a parking lot on my way to work, but I figured I'd make this video just because I don't really have much time at work. I'm working 10-day shifts, 10 and 4, so I'm kind of really busy right now. So, uh, but I was on Reddit and I saw somebody post a question um, about feeling an unease when the voices disappear, right? And this person said that they've had experience in these voices for over 10 years, and the last time it happened, this disappearance, this silence, and there are three voices, and when they had this silence, they came back with such intensity that they had their first attempt, right? And so it's like they're living on edge, right? They're feeling on edge, and with this anxiousness, kind of almost anticipating its return, right? Because it's fear. So I thought that was really an interesting thing because there's a lot of people said they felt the same thing, and I myself has experienced that, and it's really a vulnerable moment for you if you've experienced this. If you've ever been in this state where, because sometimes the voices, right, you'll be suffering for like day in and day out, like nonstop mental torture, nonstop, right? And then for months or years, like this person went 10 years. I didn't go that long, but I didn't even, I don't remember how long it was, but it's it's messed up. You can go for years or months or whatever, and then suddenly the voices just disappear, right? Or whatever symptom it is, doesn't have to be voices, just stop, right? And this period of silence is torture in itself, right? It's torture in itself. um and it's good, don't get me wrong, it's very good, but it's also a torture, a mental torture, um, and a very vulnerable state for you, right? Because sometimes, like, and I just attribute it to the grace of God, really, right? Why we have this where this happens, but it's like, how do you move forward, right? Um, it's almost like you feel so vulnerable, and I like to use this analogy because it's almost like you are naked and you're lost in a darkness, and this blizzard just hits you, and you just get you're disoriented. You don't know where you're going. You don't know how to get there. You're just completely lost, and you need clothing, you need shelter, you need a rest, right? So it's really a disorienting and vulnerable state. This middle space, I call it. It's like this. It's like your escape from prison, but you haven't really found a safe place yet, right? So what do you do in the meantime? And it's just it's a heart-wrenching thing when I read this stuff, because I understand it, man, and I know exactly what it feels like, and there's seen so many people who experience this as well, and don't know what to do, right? You suffer, right? You're suffering, and then when you get this relief, it's just another form of suffering, right? So how do you deal with that? And that's took me a while to understand that. Took me years to understand that. right? And you you it's kind of like it's kind of like you're in a coma, right? Think about it like this. For those of you who don't understand, you're in a coma for like freaking decades, man. And you wake up and the world has changed, right? And yet you have to get out of bed and start to kind of live your life in a normal way, right? Your muscles are atrophied, man. You don't know where you are. You don't know how to live in this world anymore, right? But yet you have to live in this world. You have to kind of progress because the world doesn't stop for you. It doesn't necessarily try to accommodate you so that you catch up, right? And it's not a fault of the world, it's a fault of the situation that you're in, right? Or else think about it like this. It's all you can say, like, it's like being locked up in prison for decades again, and then suddenly you get your freedom, right? You're on the outside. There you go. Live your life. You've been so institutionalized, man. Your mind has been so conditioned to the system of the institution, and when you get out now, you've seen Shawshank Redemption. The guy couldn't even go to the washroom because when he was out, because he was so used to having been told when to pee, right? When to do his business, when to do all this, that when you got out, you need that command, right? You needed that command. He couldn't go, right? So, and you see this is a problem with the system, right? Where people are so institutionalized that they get out, they don't know how to live. The world has changed, and their mind is so conditioned to run with the system that without the system, they don't know how to function, right? So all these people do, they commit crimes, get back in, because that's where they're comfortable. Their mind is now comfortable in a wretched place, imprisoned, having to be pushed around by guards and all this stuff. But that becomes a safe place, twisted as it may seem. And that's where we find ourselves with this relief that we found, because our mind has been so conditioned to function with voices, with torment, with torture. And so we develop coping mechanisms in response to the pain. Now when the pain is gone, the mechanism, there's still an automatic response, right? But there's nothing to trigger it. And so now, like when you're used to talking to people and you have this twitch, this thing, because you're trying to suppress the voices, you're trying to this, you're trying to that, and now without it, it's like this weightlessness. The weight is gone, but you don't know how to friggin' walk. Right? Now you're talking to somebody and you don't have the same burden anymore, and it's weird. It's weird, and there's a fear of it coming back, and so there's a fear also, but yet there's almost a call from your own heart, your own mind for it, right? And so this is why the mind now starts to even repeat some of the things it's been used to hearing. It starts to seek it, right? So it's like that person who comes out of jail, and now what they do is they start to look to maybe even doing something wrong in order to get back in, right? It's like it starts to look towards prison as the place maybe it needs to be. That's more accurate to say. Yeah, it starts to remember what it was like in prison. It starts to remember it was easier, right? And so it's looking backwards instead of forward, right? It's a vulnerable state, right? But if you don't manage this well, you end up right back where you came from. So the mind has to be forward, and and accept the moment, accept the release, accept the relief. And it must be do so with confidence and an energy that embraces it and looks forward, because the tendency now is to look towards the thing that you've been so conditioned to have happening, so conditioned to function with, right? And so you're going to look towards that because it is a comfort, it is a strange comfort, right? It's a very delicate space, and so many people, myself included, end up right back into the torment. And the twisted part is you get punished for going back. You get punished for going back. The voices, the intensity, the torment ramp up, and you suffer even more because you should not go back, right? You shouldn't go back, but because we don't know how to be free, this is the thing that it frustrates me, because these things are not taught. How you maybe in therapy, I never took therapy, but just with my psychiatrist and so forth, I guess they're more in the medicinal aspect of it. But maybe they are taught in therapy. Maybe somebody let me know. Like I said, I've never done that, but these things need to be understood, because it's not just that people think, oh, once you have this and you have to, because you're with it for life. And these are the things that makes these doctors think that there's no recovery or permanent recovery, because people will have that space of relief and then they end up right back in it. But it's more like people don't know how to handle that release. The mind has been conditioned to suffer, so when it's now free, how do you don't remember what it's like to live without suffering. So it's gonna go to the place of comfort, right? They call it Stockholm syndrome in a way, right? That's what it is. It's like Stockholm syndrome, right? And we see this in abusive relationships, where the abused might get free from the situation, but they end up right back with the person who abuses them, because they've been conditioned to be experiencing that without those abuse, they don't feel right. So it's like, it's the very vulnerable state, and it's a very important state, and it's necessary to understand it. And it's not that you have to go back into it. It's learning to accept and to allow to accept this weightlessness, this freedom, right? Because what you're free from can always you can always go back to. It's like the once an addict, always an addict. That's what they say. The same thing. It's like, no, it's not. It's like, how do you handle life without that addiction, those coping mechanisms that you've been so conditioned to have? It's like, okay, now you got to recondition yourself to how to live freely, right? And this is what we have to learn, and this is where having faith and having hope and having just a conviction and these things really come into play, because the weapons in this battlefield are not physical. They are not physical. All right, you need something greater, right? And because sometimes medications aren't gonna do the job, they aren't enough. So anyway, my bus is here, so I'm gonna get out of here. But yeah, hopefully I was able to articulate that well enough for you. I know sometimes I am writing some of this stuff down, because I do a better job writing it down. My thoughts come up more, better. But so anyways, man, hopefully that helps some of you. Until next time, later.